Phil Capstick and Jack Goff. We don't have info on driver starting orders for this race, but there will be a mandatory pit stop for everybody in the middle of the race. Driver changes. The MSV TrackDay Trophy in its second season now, launched really to bring drivers into motorsport, drivers who take part in track days want to take part in motor racing. And the rule is that each team must have one novice driver within it. At least one or two drivers has to be a novice, which is to say that they're in their first 6 races. So you're classed as a novice until you get 6 signatures. You complete successfully 6 races, then you move on to a full licence. So number 66 machine lines up on pole position. The Lotus Elise next to the BMW then of number 24 James Britton, already a race winner this season. Then the 2 Clios on row 2, number 56 John Hamilton, and then number 6 Thomas and Croft, and then got a Porsche the Saab on row 3 of the grid. So Hugh and Drummond green car, black Saab on the outside of road number 3. They're still lining up at the back of the field for an eclectic mixture of cars, 4 different classes, very variable speeds and brake horsepower per tonne. The Class A cars, for example, have up to 200 brake horsepower per tonne, but down to the Class D cars, the less powerful cars out there, they only have up to 125 brake horsepower per tonne, and around the short 1.2 mile Indy circuit here at Brands Hatch, particularly with the field probably being spread out a little bit more than normal with wet conditions. There will be a lot of lappery in this, but as long as you do well within your class, you can still take home the trophy at the end of the day. Right, the green flag I think has been waved at the back of the field, so we're into the start procedure now, and once the red lights come on, we will be underway very shortly thereafter. They're on now, so the ice picks on the gantry. Get ready for your 45-minute race. Great start for the pole position car. The Lotus Elise gets straight into the lead of the race. It's a bad start though for the number 6 car of Thomas and Croft from the second row. That is going to drop back, I would think, to around about 6th position. So it's the Lotus Elise that leads. Second place is James Britton's BMW. Through to third then it looks like John Hamilton in the Renault Clio has gone through. The Porsche up next. Oh, there's a spin there from one of the 924s coming out of Paddock Hill Bend. That was from around about 10th position. It's the number 71 machine that's gone round the Haywood Cummings car from the 5th row of the grid. So that gets into a full 360. It's about to get going back up the hill though. Meanwhile, there's a close battle going on for second place here as they arrive at Graham Hill Bend and trying to go around the outside here. Is number 56 John Hamilton, and I think he's done it as well. So terrific traction, terrific confidence, and he just gets around the rear wheel drive BMW of James Britton, who's devoted down to 3rd place then as they go towards clearways for the first time. 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th in a battle as well. I think the number 6 Renault Clio has started to work its way back up through the order after a nicky getaway, and indeed it has. That's the one that's got back up to 4th place ahead of the next group of cars. So it started on the second row, it's got back up into the top 4, but off the line it I think dropped down to 6th or 7th place. They come through then at the end of lap number 1, and the 66 Lotus Elise leads, but a 1.4 second lead is pretty big, but there's still a long way to go. Hamilton and Britton having swapped around are 2nd and 3rd, but there's a moment there for the second place car. The Clio gets well out of shape coming out of Paddock Hill Bend.
Yeah, that's when it would be leaning on the bar telling people about tonight, wasn't it? Because the car more than once was really twitching, and except for the leading trio that are rather broken away, everybody else is pretty much running in a fairly lengthy line with plenty of dicing still going on in the midfield. So the Lotus Elise trying to make good its escape. The problem being for these novice drivers is knowing exactly where to push and when the grip is going to come to them out and about around on the circuit. The McHugh Porsche is there solidly in 5th position, as having had that moment, John Hamilton is recovering. We've got a spin, unfortunately that's the car, the HG Motorsport Bird and Plaque car that brought out the red flags in qualifying this, safety car in qualifying this morning, and they recover, having lost several positions, but otherwise no problems whatsoever for them, as the leading 3 cars across the line. And then also coming up well through the order is the Team Cream Slice Thomas and Croft Clio as well. The Clio clearly being a weapon of choice for several of the drivers at the very head of the field. Then we've got the McHughes in the Porsche, and then next up is the McCormack and Longworth Subaru in 6th position, with the Littlewoods in 7th, White in car 16 8th. 9th place is the number 99 car of Smith & Flower, BUC Racing. They've gone well on the grid. And then in 10th place is 93 Kester Cook and Paul Hatton.
Yeah, number 16 Nigel White's had a very good start to the race in the VW Golf, because he started 19th, and after 2 laps he's worked his way up to 8th place. So watch for that VW Golf It's got good pace as well in the 1 minute 10s, despite the fact that it's been in traffic so far. And that car there, for number 16, I think could have plenty of time to work its way back through the order. It's just coming down now into Graham Hill Bend, evidently jostling the position with one of the Porsche 1940s has made a mistake coming out of Druids and puts a couple of wheels on the grass, but then gets going again without losing too many places or too much time. It was the number 46 car that had the problem, so number 46 Cliff Jordan, that's one of the Class D entries, the Pink Express Racing car. Cliff racing on his own today. Not all of them have two drivers, but they will all have to stop, so there's no advantage to be gained from being just a single driver. Fastest lap of the race then goes to the leaders, number 66 with the 64.5, 4.3 seconds clear now. Already coming out of Druids is the race leading Lotus Elise, car number 66, just coming out of Druids now, second, third and fourth. And what about the battle for second place? Well, at the moment, second is pulling away from James Britton in third. Probably he's more concerned with what's going on behind, because that number 6 Renault Clio is a little bit quicker than the BMW is chasing at the moment.
And we've got two of them spinning at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend. Is everybody going to miss them? Well, they don't miss each other. They just have a little kiss in the middle of the circuit. Hopefully they'll be able to fire up and get back on their way. The battle that's really engaged, they do. The battle that's fantastic ahead of the field is that we've got the 88 Subaru busy defending as best it can from the number 16 Nigel White Volkswagen Golf, and so that is probably the closest tussle on track at the moment. It is for 6th, 7th and 8th, but particularly 6th and 7th. And White is going to go through on the inside of the Subaru. Through he goes at Clearways, so gaining the place is Nigel White in the number 16 car, and so he goes up into 6th position. So the car's rather lost out from all of that. Unfortunately it's number 22, that's the Little Woods, and they have slipped back down the order. And in the immediate future, the challenge now for the race leaders is going to be that they will be in with some of the slower cars, and the last 10 or so cars in this race really are running as one long continuous train. And so for the race leaders, Capsicum Golf, this is going to be the challenge in the Elise, trying to find their way through. They seem to be able to do that without too many problems, certainly for the first couple of cars through Clearways, and the speed differential is such they're just able to surge on around the outside. That's going to become really quite close once the battle for 6th place arrives into the back markers. Yeah, the two cars that had that spin at Paddock Hill Bend, the two that started together on the grid, number 54, the Blake's Dakar Trader's Edge Power Valenta car, number 8, Alan and Philpott, which again comes from Class C. They got away with it. The other one that's had a spin as well, and he's not too far away from being lapped now, was the number 84 Class D Red Moon Racing Toyota of Stephen Baker and Ian Ridgway. That was down at Graham Hill Bend. Now, top 4 have gone through. The one still to watch though is the one in 6th place. The 5th place car, number 64 Hughes, goes through. And it's this Golf, number 16, across the start finish line, which has come from 19th on the grid. And White is now up into 6th place, and he's just done his personal best lap time of 67.8, and he's the best part of 2 seconds quicker than the Porsche, and he's only 3.9 seconds behind. Number 71 goes off, coming out of Graham Hill Bend once again. So the Nick Haywood, Andrew Cummings, Chav Motorsports entered Porsche, has been on the grass for a second time in this race. Don't forget that many of these drivers are relatively inexperienced, and many of them won't have even raced in these wet conditions before, so it's a big ask for them to have a neat and tidy race in what's very tricky circumstances. The race leader of the Lotus Elise goes through now, 3 abreast, because as they're all racing each other, he's trying to lap them. So number 66, the Capsicum Golf car, goes through, and it's still quicker despite the lappery of the 2nd place car, which is only just coming through now. Hamilton in car number 56, and then Britton in the BMW 3 seconds back now, but was quicker on that lap through the traffic. So the BMW is just starting to close back up. Car number 24 onto the number 56 John Hamilton machine, which started the front row of the grid. And then Thomas and Croft, number 6, are in 4th place on the same sort of pace as those ahead. And then McHugh will come through in 5th place with less than a 3-second advantage now over the VW Golf. That's just rising up towards Druids Corner now. The red Porsche 924, car number 64 in 5th place, but losing time all the time to the closing VW Golf of White. Yeah, that is probably one of the closer battles. We've still got the race leaders trying to carve through the traffic, and this is actually probably one of the most difficult areas for these drivers graduating from track days, because track days have very strict rules around overtaking discipline, and on the race circuit that overtaking discipline goes out the window. Essentially you can go through wherever you want to, provided you think you can, as long as you do it fairly. and so some of the drivers ahead of the field having to be reasonably aggressive through the traffic this time around. Though I think James Britton has rather lost out in the traffic. Yes, that lap was a fair amount slower than John Hamilton, 1.5 seconds slower in fact, so that gap widens once more. But this time Britton should be on a better lap than Hamilton because he's got limited traffic ahead of him. Hamilton's got a queue of 4 cars through Druids, which he's going to try and negotiate the first of those, the Honda Integra, which goes around the outside of, through Druids. He's then going to come onto the tail of the HG Motorsport car, which he goes to the inside of, turning through Graham Hill Bend. That was looking very close. And then he comes onto the tail of the number 12 machine, the Simon Barnard BMW, goes past Simon as well without too many problems. So what about the McHughes? How are they getting on? Are they being caught by Nigel White? Well, in terms of the track space between them, the gap is 2.7 seconds. It looks like it might actually be a little bit less than that now, Chris, as they turn through Graham Hill Bend. The white Golf just closing in on the red Porsche.
Cliff Jordan, number 46, has retired to the pit lane for now. The car was going very slow. He pulled off into the pit lane, obviously re-emerged. The Porsche 944 out. I'm talking about the number 16 machine flying through the order. Nigel White from 19th on the grid up to 6th place. But the other one that's charging up through the order is that Porsche of Wright Cameron. It was quick enough to qualify on the 3rd row of the grid. It had to start at the back because it was disqualified from qualifying, repeatedly overtaking under the yellow flags. But the number 48 Porsche 993 George Wright and James Cameron, Major James Cameron, is now up into 17th place. 17th doesn't sound very high, but it started down in 33rd position on the grid, so it's already worked its way through half the field. So watch out for the number 48 Porsche as it charges through the bright yellow machine. You can't miss it. 8 laps complete then. This is the order. Number 66 Capstick and Goff lead by 16 seconds. Number 56 Hamilton is second. Number 24 Britton leads his class and is third overall. Number 6 Thomas and Croft are fourth. Number 64 the McHughes are fifth. Number 16 is White in 6th place. Number 88 is in 7th. Car 22 the Little Ones in 8th. And car 4 Honeybone and Brown runs in 9th place. 10th place is Smith and Flower. 11th number 93 Cook and Hat. 12th number 3 Compound Moraes. 13th number 69 Drummond and Green. 14th number 5 Pickering. 15th number 90 Malmsfleet and Reed. 16th now is the number 48 car Wright Cameron, so that's gained another place. 17th is number 21 Jackson Moore, and 18th, 19th and 20th we've got cars 96, 8 and 14. Fastest lap of the race and belong to the race leaders, but on the same sort of pace as the leaders now is the man in 2nd place, John Hamilton.
So John Hamilton making progress. We've got a car off at Paddock Hill Bend, and that's actually quite an exposed position, so we've got waved yellow flags. And the other battle that's just coming together quite nicely is that the Golf of Nigel White is being kept fairly honest here by the TfL Racing Subaru of McCormack and Longworth. They are still more or less there or thereabouts on the tail of the white Golf, so they turn through Druids, and in fact there's just one slower car between the pair of them. The errant Golf has recovered itself from the gravel trap at Paddock Hill Bend, which is good to see, so no need for any sort of safety car interruption here, as Nigel White's charge up the field may just be coming to a bit of a conclusion. The other battle that is going really very nicely is that the Littlewoods are being caught quite rapidly and being really kept honest by the Apple Car Centre number 4 entry, Honeybone and Brown, and that's the 2 Clios. It's the blue Clio of the Littlewoods who pull their efforts to race in the TrackDay Trophy, and then the Apple Car Centre, the silver Clio immediately behind them. They're just going past the Skelly's Racing yellow Lotus Elise, and this is a good run actually for the number 4 Clio, the silver machine, looking to try and draw onto terms with Littlewoods. This is for 8th position. Do the Littlewoods possibly have the legs in a straight line? Yes they do, but 2 very similar Clios. Then Constantine Ring up under braking into Paddock Hill Bend, and it's through the corners where the Apple Car Centre entry is just that little bit quicker, Littlewood racing car, so that battle is going to go all the way, certainly until the pit stops.
Tremendous battle going on here, about to go for the start and finish line for, well, it's only for 15th place, but we've got an eclectic mixture of cars out there, because you've got the Honda Civic car number 90 about to go to Paddock Hill Bend. That's Donna Marie Mapleston, and Alex Reed will share the car as well. And then you've got this flying Porsche of Jim Cameron number 48 and George Wright, which has worked its way right from the back of the grid. Also in the mix though, just behind it on very similar pace. So you've got a Honda Civic, you've got a Porsche, you've got a Renault Clio, and you've got a Caterham in the mix as well. And those 4 cars will be following each other around. So obviously the higher up the order you get, the harder it is for that Porsche to try and work his way through, and he just isn't able to catch at the moment the number 90 Honda Civic. So the gap stays about the same between them as they come out of Graham Hill Bend. There are 4 cars then battling for 15th position, coming within about a second of each other.
And still, Nigel White is having a great tussle with the Subaru. Immediately behind him, the silver car. They're just about to lap the Team Chav Porsche. What about the Apple Car Centre, a Littlewood battle? And it is the number 4 Clio that's gone through into Paddock Hill Bend. So they gain the place, go up into 8th position. They're also about to go a lap down to the race leading Elise. And it's through the traffic where you're really seeing some of the drivers excelling. And so we've got this fight here for 5th, 6th and 7th. That is coming together quite nicely. Then we've got the gap back to the 8th and 9th place tussle. They've just swapped in the past couple of corners, and they've also gone a lap down. Let's see whether the Littlewoods have got any response to the number 4 Apple Car Centre machine. And then we have got the yellow Porsche, which is still trying to side its way through at the moment. It can't quite get onto terms with the number 90 car of the DMTM Racing concern. In fact, they go down a lap there to John Hamilton. So John Hamilton trying to side through the field. The next people immediately behind the Porsche, that is car number 21, and it's one of the Clios.
Subaru's just gone past the VW Golf for 6th position. Yes, 6th position. So Nigel White, having gone up through the order for the first time in this race, goes backwards, loses a place because he's been harassed for quite a while now by Lee McCormack, Pete Longworth's Subaru. Brett's at the TfL Racing. Subaru gets through then, not to be confused with TfL Racing, which ran in the International Speed Euro Series with Sarah Reader and Darren Burt. This is a different TfL Racing, and that car, having followed the VW Golf for a couple of laps now, has finally found its way through. On the last lap, through the traffic, it may have been related, but the gap has been coming down between 2nd and 3rd. So John Hamilton, number 56, the Renault Clio, his gap, his advantage over James Britt's BMW has come down now to just over 3 seconds. James taking about a second and a half out of him over the last 2 laps, so 13 laps complete. Still have just under 30 minutes of the race to go, so we're at 1/3 distance, and that gap from 2nd to 3rd definitely starting to come down, and ahead of the Q Porsche as well has gone that Subaru on that lap, so it's picked up 2 places. The Subaru's gone from 7th up to 5th place, and number 88 absolutely flying at the moment, heading up towards Druids Corner, and it's just done its personal best lap of the race.
And it's about to get lapped as well by the race leader, who demotes the McHughes in the Porsche. So the leading Elise is going very nicely. That hasn't been such a good lap, I don't think, for John Britton, because he's been really caught in some of the traffic. He flashes the lights at the yellow Porsche saying, come on, let me through, along the Ram straight, which he is going to do now. Yes, he lost 1.5 seconds, the car in front, and the Porsche does not want to concede and go a lap down, and this is going to be hugely frustrating for Britton, who is going to make that move stick. Now coming out of Paddock Hill Bend, climbing up the hill to Druids, and through he goes up the inside, so he is able to put the lap on the Porsche, whose charge up the field has temporarily been curtailed, partly as a result of being lapped, and partly also as we have a bit of a slide there from the 2nd place Clio, and the track conditions are oh so slippery, and around goes the Porsche, number 48, around he goes, stamping on the brakes in the Clio. The Jackson Moore and Broad 2B Monkeys, number 21 car, they stamp on the brakes, nobody hits the Porsche. It's going to rejoin, but to the loss of several positions, so they go back into the fray. We are just over 1/3 of the way through this race. We've got 28 minutes left on the clock, and approaching shortly mid-race distance, which is when the majority of the pit stops, certainly the 2 driver entry pit stops, will be made, as the track gradually beginning to dry. But really, these cars, they're not going to move too much water off their own back, Chris, and they need the wind to whip up if we're going to get a dry line between now and the end of the race.
James Britton, number 24, the blue BMW, heading up Druids Corner, towards Druids Corner now. Would have been frustrated by that Porsche, the back marker, but the good news for him is that despite all that, he's 0.002 of a second quicker than the number 56 Clio of Hamilton that he's tried to catch, and Hamilton then gets a bit sideways, 4-wheel drift going through the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend, so he's coming under pressure now. The track, you'd say, is more greasy than wet now. These can be very difficult conditions, because you'd think that there's more grip out there than there was in the full wet conditions, but sometimes the greasy damp conditions can be very deceiving, very much slippier and slidier, and with lots of cars running off track as well. The mud can be dragged onto the circuit. It's not being washed clean as it is when it's raining, and the treaded tyres aren't doing what they're meant to do. They're not throwing away the surface water because there's not really any there, so it can be pretty tricky out there. The 56 car of Hamilton comes through, a 106.5 for him, a 104.6 for Britton in the BMW. That's his personal best lap time, and suddenly the gap has come down to just 2.5 seconds now. That battle heading up towards Druids Corner. More traffic to deal with for the BMW. This is going to be a feature of the rest of the race now, and the gap will yo-yo as they go in and out of the traffic. But the Clio and the BMW second and third about to come up to a whole host of slower cars, and this could be an opportunity then for Britain to close the gap.
This has been his best opportunity, although he's being helped by the fact that John Hamilton is he's unafraid to slide that car through Graham Hill. But he's done it the last 3 laps, and he actually gathers it up very nicely, receiving tuition from the former Clio Cup champion Danny Buxton as well throughout the course of the season. So Hamilton getting plenty of support in how to best pedal that Clio, but this is surely going to be John Britton's opportunity, although several of those cars in front of him peeling into the pit lane because the pit window is open. Certainly single driver entries will be looking to pit outside the busiest period in the pit stops. So the gap last time was 2.4 seconds between Hamilton and Britton. What is it this time around? Across the line they go. James Britton closes the gap down by a further 0.4 of a second, so it's down to 2.1 seconds as Hamilton puts the Saab between himself and James Britton, climbing up the hill towards Drisbin. So the 3 cars, Chris, fighting quite intensely amongst themselves, being headed up by Kester Cook, which is what's going to cause them some concern, although they may have sorted themselves out a little bit in Druids. One of them runs wide, but those 3 cars are very concerned with their own race as John Hamilton now closes on their tail. Yeah,
and the cars now coming into the pits. One of them that's coming into the pits is the BUC Racing number 99 Subaru of Stuart Smith and Mark Flower. That had a very good first stint because it started the race down in 16th place. It got up to 9th position just before it came into the pit, so that's one that might feature. This early pit stop might work for it. If you feel you're about to come up to a load of traffic, you're going to have a few slow laps, and you're thinking about coming into the pits anyway, then there must be a degree of flexibility in these pits where the second driver gets ready early, and if there's a driver that's out there, you decide, yeah, actually it's going to be a slow few laps, I might as well come in now, gain a bit of an advantage that way. So that's decided to pits relatively early, 1 or 2 now coming in, and as I mentioned, the vast majority will be coming in the next 4 or 5 minutes. So we'll keep an eye on the progress of the 99 cars. He's dropped out of the top 10 again now with that pit stop. Certainly firing his way up the order. The fastest lap of the race last time through for the race leaders kept sticking off the 63.759 second lap. That was 2 seconds quicker than the cars in second and third positions. And John Hamilton was 2 seconds clear, and the Renault Clio working his way through the traffic now is
being caught.
Still having moments, isn't it? The BMW seems to be a little bit more, well, either lucky or a bit more aggressive through the traffic, so the gap right down now between them, and again it gets booked, and the second place car can't find a way past the slower cars at Clearways, and Hamilton now has got Britton right behind him. It was 2 seconds, it's probably less than a second now, and the number 56 Clio in second place with the other blue car, the BMW, right in its tail now as James Britton gets very, very close. They decide to go either side of the back markers. Britton tries the outside line, that's not going to work. The Clio of Hamilton goes up the inside, gets past one back marker, won't get past the other. The BMW now tries to slice up the inside. The back marker doesn't see him, he almost gets his nose chopped off, so he has to go to the outside. He's still got plenty of momentum though. Now he gets around to the outside of the back marker. Very, very difficult for this. The slow driver, they're not used to this. And many of these novice drivers looking in the mirrors for the traffic, they're relying on the blue flags from the marshals as well, and slicing up the inside of the way to Graham Hill Bend now goes Hamilton in the Renault Clio. He's just desperately trying to get through the traffic because he can see that BMW looming bigger and bigger in his mirrors, and they're carving their way through the slower cars. Once again the BMW gets booked, so on one lap it works out for the car in second place, Hamilton, and on the other lap it's just working out for the BMW and for Britton, and that time you have to say it was the second place car that benefited most men.
Yeah, I think it was also partly for James Britton that the car that was in and among in that fight with the 2 back markers going slightly quicker was a blue BMW, and I'm not entirely unconvinced that the first of those back markers didn't think it was the car he was busy dicing with when he shut the door, climbing the hill to Druids. It gets again pretty tight as we've got a spinner at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend and into the gravel trap. That is car 21, the 2B Monkeys car. Our unfortunately, I think maybe going no further because the car is facing at 180 degrees to the correct direction of the circuit. It's all four wheels in the gravel, and with a clear road, this is enabling James Britton to really close onto the tail of John Hamilton. Hamilton is going to have to be pretty aggressive here into Graham Hill Bend because James Britton as well is looking as if he's going to try and go around the outside of the number 84. Can't put the lap on it. That's exactly what he does, and so he gains that place, or at least gains the track position. They then lap the 71 Team Chav Racing Porsche, and so the gap widens out ever so slightly once more. The Marshals doing what they can to push the little Clio out of the gravel trap, although I fear that is going to be a move born more in optimism than the reality of getting that car out of there. So we've got waved yellow flags covering the scene at Paddock Hill Bend. The pit window is well and truly alive, and the fight for second place arrives into Paddock Hill Bend, and the Marshals decide to give up that effort. The driver clambers out of the car. They're completely unhurt. It's just a fairly minor spin into the gravel trap, and we're going to have the snatch vehicle coming out to recover the vehicle. So varying degrees of lift off into Paddock Hill Bend, which again, when they're in some of the back markers, is potentially going to be a bit of an issue for the quicker drivers who might feel a little bit more confident with the pace they can carry through at Paddock. At the moment, can't see any sign of the safety car, so that the car is going to be recovered under a live snatch situation. We have got just over 20 minutes left in the race.
The other close battle that was going on, and then they both came into the pits at the same time. They're both running inside the top 10, and they're both in Class C. Number 93, the big skids Ford Fiesta, good Paul Hatton, and number 93 car was up against the number 3 Seat Leon, Cooper of Clink Compound, and Mike Moraes, the Windgut Racing into cars. So 93 and 3 were up into the top 10. They were just 0.3 of a second apart, and they both came into the pits together. And you'll notice a little quieter out of the track at the moment. That's because I reckon we've got at least a dozen cars in the pit lane making their driver changes now. New personal best lap time, John Hamilton in second place with a 64.6 second lap. That was more than half a second quicker than the pursuing James Britton BMW. So that gap has gone back out, which just gives him a little bit more breathing space. And at the moment as well, as I said, there's less traffic for them to deal with at this stage of the race. That battle now for second place coming out of Graham Hill Bend. Very much a dry line forming on the track now. You might find that things change somewhat in the second half of the race because A, the track conditions have changed. There will be cars and drivers that prefer the drier conditions more than the wet conditions, and B, of course, we're going to have different drivers in the majority of cars for the second stint. So the BMW just losing out a bit on the previous lap. 1.7 seconds was the gap, but maybe James Britton has just pulled a little bit of that back, maybe 1 or 2 tenths on this lap. Let's find out. Through they go, and yet the gap stands to just under 1.4 seconds, so a couple of tenths quicker on that lap was James Britton, and a bit of clear track for him. Yellow flag still waving because that car is being pulled out of the gravel now by the snatch vehicle. Well, that I think will be dealt with fairly soon, and pretty soon I guess these two cars, second and third, are going to have to make their pit stops as well, so it could become a race between the pit crews.
Certainly could do. Generally the pit crew is whatever friend or relative is to hand with the iPhone, because that is the ethos of the TrackDay Trophy, to keep it as affordable as possible, and they do have the mandatory pit stop time they've got to adhere to. The real challenge, I think, is going to be for the drivers coming out onto the circuit, because these conditions do lean towards the single driver entries, because they will know just how quickly the track is drying out, just where the pockets of grip are and where the grip isn't, whereas the drivers getting in cold are going to have a slightly rude awakening as to where they can push and where they can't, because there is the beginnings of a dry line that's emerging, certainly into Paddock Hill Bend, also at Graham Hill Bend. It's just going to be a case of how quickly that really develops. As well, this is going to be interesting, because overtaking several cars under yellow flags is John Hamilton, lapping a good number of cars through Paddock Hill Bend. James Britton backed off, and wisely so, because there was a story in the paper this week about a thief in Bradford who stole the CCTV camera whilst being filmed on the CCTV camera stealing it, and if I'm honest, that was not unlike that for John Hamilton there, because if you're going to overtake under yellows, don't do it to 5 cars at once.
What do you think? Yellow flags. 2:45. There's going to be some marshals going home this weekend. Very big bicycle with yellow flags. Sorry, just so. Probably about 4 hours this weekend. very, very buff indeed after this one. So Captain Goff continues to lead, getting quicker and quicker as you expect the track drying up. 64.6 second laps. The order will be slightly mixed up for the time being because these final few pit stops are out of the way. We'll see just who will be winners and if Hammond the king line
so I'd say give it another
white car.
Give it another minute and we go.
The top 10 now.
Take 15 seconds to get down here, mate, yeah?
He's up into ninth place and second place car looking into pits and Hamilton comes in. So it is James Britton, so the battle is going to resume in the pit lane this time, but actually absolutely nose to tail in the pit lane as well. Not only have they been together on track, but they also picked literally next to each other, just in front of who should pop in, but the race leading car Captain Goff. So that one I think it was Jack Goff.
Clearways though, nice and slow in, nice wide line out, floor it and just don't come around the apex. The back will start to twitch, but keep your foot in, yeah? And it'll pull itself straight. Okay, go.
Getting out, at least to get in. Team Boss still captain.
And Jack Goff set the fastest lap of the race on his final flying lap of the circuit as well, at 1 minute 1.697, but it's still 7 seconds away from the pace that we saw running a little bit earlier on, which shows just how tricky the circuit remains even as the dry line just begins to appear at several of the corners. So waiting until the very end of the pit window to peel off, because we've got just 60 minutes left in the race. We have got a spinner, and that is the Dadson Racing Caterham, the one of Paddock Hill Bend. They are going to recover probably to the loss of just a couple of places. And so the Caterham, which Roseball Caterham, I think that came up in the hands of Graham Newman through the Caterham Academy many years ago, so sort of has done 2 beginner routes into motorsport. The Caterham of the Newmans currently in 21st position, but the order is a little bit on its head, and we won't really find out quite who is where until after everybody emerges from their pit stops. The timing is underway, the instructions being given to the drivers.
Just wonder if James Britton's made a bit of an error here, because he got very close to the tail end of that Clio car, and if he does get to be released first, he's going to have got a tight angle to get back out, isn't it? Because he's only a foot away from the back of the Clio. This might not become irrelevant if there is any kind of penalty that might be following later on, but I suppose in theory, if they're having the same timed pit stop, the Clio should get out of it. Anyway, the 88 machine of Cormac and Longworth, the Subaru Impreza, has gone back out. That's he's still inside the top 6, so that's worked out for them. Still the top 3 are in the pits, and having made their stops. Jack Goff having done an excellent first stint. Now we'll hand over to his teammate Capstick, still being held there. So it should be, in theory, the Clio followed by the BMW, followed by the Lotus Elise, but the Lotus a lap clear.
And I think the Major Jim Cameron has just taken over at the wheel of the number 48 Porsche, because that car has just done its best lap of the race, 64.105. They're currently in 16th position, but Cameron, something a veteran of these TrackDay Trophy races, is in good form. So it's John Hamilton who emerges from the pits first, it's Phil Capstick second, and then James Britton in third. So Britton actually losing out relatively in terms of track position through those pit stops, but obviously we will have to wait to see whether further judgments will elevate him back up through the order. So he is fed out into a little bit of traffic as everybody in the field has now pitted.
Candler spotted that the race leading guys are getting bump started then. The Lotus Elise with Capstick in it. I think it's a slightly longer pit stop, isn't it, for the single drivers? They get a bit longer in, so James Britton is a single driver, so it just makes sense that he lost a bit of time there, so he's going to have to fight back. He's trying to get a lap back now on the number 66 car of Phil Capstick though, and then lap himself. The side by side, and the BMW goes through on the way into Surtees. Still more traffic ahead, and so wait to see when they come through next time. That should give us the order there, the definitive order of the race, with everybody theoretically having made their pit stops. Just 13 minutes or so to go, and it is number 66 Phil Capstick and Jack Goff that lead the way by the best part of a minute from number 56 the Clio of John Hamilton. Third across the line now is Britton, and he's 9.6 seconds down on Hamilton, so that gap has opened up significantly. Fourth is number 6 the Thomas and Croft Clio. Fifth is number 64 the McHughes. Sixth is number 88 that's Subaru. Seventh is number 69 Drummond and Green. Eighth is number 16 Nigel White, so he's dropped back a bit during that middle stint of the race. The Littlewood's number 22 on 9th, 10th number 3 Copper Mares, and then 11th number 99 Smith Flower, 12th number 4 Honeybone and Brown. 13th, number 93, Cook and Hatton. 14th, number 8, Allen and Philpott, which has come through the order somewhat from a loading grid. 15th, number 19, Mark's Fleet. And 16th, the 48 car, Ryan Cameron. 17th, 5, Pickering. 18th, number 1, Jocelyn Kozlowski. And 19th, number 19, Bernard Platt. 20th, number 84, Baker. And Bigway, and that's still only 2/3 of the grid because there's 33 cars, but plenty of cars still circulating in this race.
And whether that order will remain until the end of the race. Now, the challenge here for Phil Capstick is going to be that John Hamilton, penalties notwithstanding, is circulating 7 seconds lap quicker, and James Britton has set the fast lap of the race, 1:04.32, and he's 11 seconds a lap quicker than Phil Capstick, and they are easily going to reel in the lap that they have got in deficit to the Lotus Elise, circulating at that sort of pace. So this race is far from over. Likewise, James Britton is closing in on John Hamilton in the Clio, who is maybe not feeling the grip coming to him quite as rapidly as James Britton, and the poise of that BMW through Graham Hill Bend really seems to indicate that James Britton is absolutely on top of what that car's doing. Hamilton is trying to scythe through a little bit of traffic, whereas Britton is going to have a fairly clear lap this time, and he is clearly sensing that the track, if he sticks to the right bits of it, is now, if not quite dry, then not too far away from being dry. His fastest time in qualifying this morning was a 55. That was on a fully dry track. Let's see what he does this time, because that seemed like a very good lap and one that was unencumbered by traffic. So over the line goes James Britton, and yes, he's fractionally faster. He brings now John Hamilton's advantage down to just 2.7 seconds, and Hamilton has another huge twitch through Paddock Hill Bend, whereas James Britton just chips his way past the back marker, climbs up the hill towards Druids, and so John Hamilton, well, he's been under pressure all race long from James Britton, but Britton seems like a new man since his pit stop. He really is relishing the conditions, and he's circulating some 4 seconds a lap quicker.
Yeah, sort of cake or something in the pit stop, giving him a bit of energy, but he's flying, isn't he? Fastest lap of the race. Now, the good news for the race leaders is that Phil Capstick is getting better and better. He did a 1:11, then he did a 1:08, and he's just done a 1:06 lap. So that's the good news. The bad news is still quite a bit slower than Hamilton in second place, who did a 1:04, and he's a lot slower than the third place car of Britain. So the lead advantage coming down all the time. I think it was 46 seconds last time around, and here comes the third place battle now. The BMW already is on the tail of Hamilton. He's not on the tail, he's alongside, and through he comes. And on this drying track, it seems he's suiting the BMW. The rear-wheel drive a little bit more tricky when it was wetter earlier on, but now it's drying up. It is absolutely coming to the BMW. So through to second place goes James Britton, and 43.2 seconds is now the deficit that he's got to try and make up on Phil Capstick in the number 66 Lotus Elise. Again, Phil Capstick got better on that lap, so it's coming to him. He's bedding himself in. He did a 65.6 second lap that time through, so he's now going 6 seconds a lap quicker than he was at the start. I guess he may have had some traffic when he first went out as well, but he's still 5 seconds a lap slower. We've had 30 laps, we've got 9 minutes to go, and 5 seconds a lap. I think he's probably going to just about do this if he can keep it up, James Britton.
He really needs it to remain, though, around about 5 seconds lap, because if it slips much below that, then Phil Capstick will have enough in hand, and Britton is going past some of the slower cars now as if they're not even there, and he completes his 30th lap of the race, and he goes below the minute mark for the first time in the race. 59.9 for James Britton as he moves away from John Hamilton. So let's have a look out to the far side of the circuit, and Phil Capstick, who is currently piloting the little Lotus Elise through Clark Curve onto the Brabham Straight. What sort of lap time can he do? If he can get down to the 104s, the 103s, that might just be enough to sustain that 37-second gap, and he has done just that. So he gives away exactly 4 seconds on that lap to within 0.03 of a second. We have got 8.5 minutes left on the clock. The gap was around about 35 seconds. It's going to be touch and go, and it may well come down to, once more, how ruthless people can be in the traffic. There's also a great fight going on between the McHughes in the Porsche, the 69 Drummond Green car, and then the number 88 Subaru, because they are separated by less than a second, and the three of them running line astern into Paddock Hill Bend. So we've got the Saab right on the tail of the Porsche, which seems diminutive in comparison, then the Subaru very much in attendance, the Silver Machine, but it's the Porsche and the Saab looking to the outside of the Porsche through Druids, but I think that the McHughes are just going to hold on, and they're now going to try and build a little bit of a gap as they make their way through quite a a fair amount of traffic, although the Saab challenging up the inside line and doesn't quite do it. And then the 64 Porsche, he goes past the 29 BMW, the bright orange machine, sprint along towards Surtees, and the Saab still asking all the right questions. It's enabled the Subaru to join into that train, so there's 3 of them fighting it out over 5th position.
Right, including the one they're on, I reckon 9 laps to go, and 4 seconds a lap the difference. 32 seconds was the lead advantage. I think at this rate of knots, Britain is going to do this with a lap or 2 to spare. He's going to catch the gap. Whether he's going to get through, I'm not sure. But number 66 goes through 64.4 second lap, so that wasn't quite as good this time through. This battle between McHugh, Drummond, the McHughs, Drummond and Green and McCormack. Longstone goes through Paddock Hill Bend and working its way through. The Porsche is now ahead of the Saab. The Subaru just dropping back a bit, and that's all about to be lapped by the BMW, which is running in second place. The blue number 24 car of James Britton then is about to lap this battle for 5th place, and 4th place car just going through the start finish line. The Thomas and Croft Clio, number 6, still running in 4th position. Right, the BMW then just coming onto the tail of this Saab, and the Saab now about to look to the inside as it goes towards Surtees and just simply drives past the Porsche. So the Saab now moves up into 5th place. The McHugh Porsche dropping down to 6th position and about to be lapped, runs out wide, lets the BMW come through, and the race leader then he's going slower again, so this is bad news. Phil Cupstick, presumably this is traffic related, and it might yo-yo a bit because whatever traffic he gets a lap or so later, the BMW is going to pick up on as well. So 33 laps complete. The gap's down to 21 seconds, so 6.4 seconds gained on that lap by James Britton. He's still, even in the traffic, lapping beneath the 1 minute barrier, and the race leader is just coming out of Graham Hill Bend. The silver Elise with the red stripes on number 66. Just up at Druids now is the BMW, but the Lotus Elise has got a relatively clear couple of laps ahead. The BMW not so much, because it's got about 7 or 8 cars to try and work his way through now. Just behind, we've got this battle going on with the Porsche, now caught by the Subaru. Number 88 car has got plenty of traction in wet conditions, and as the Porsche was lapping somebody else, he almost cut off the nose of the Subaru. The number 88 car of Lee McCormack and Peter Longworth then just having to back off the throttle to avoid running into the back of the Porsche. That the battle for 6th place. Number 64, the red Porsche, just coming around clearways now. It's got a back marker in between himself and the Subaru Impreza. This gap is coming down all the time. There's just 5 minutes to go, but the BMW, if you can have a good couple of laps here, has still got a very, very good chance, James Britton, of getting the lead of the race.
But that was a worse lap though, wasn't it? It was a few seconds slower, so it was only 3 seconds the gap came down by on that occasion, so the gap is 18 seconds. So through Graham Hill Bend goes the Elise, as climbing up towards Druids goes the 2nd place BMW, and having had a clear lap, there's now a little bit of traffic ahead of Phil Capstick as James Britton in the BMW plunges down from Druids. He is going to come across the Newmans in the Datsun Caterham, and then the hard-charging Saab, which, having made that manoeuvre stick, has moved away as the Subaru has gone through and past the McHughs in the Porsche. So the 88 car goes up into 6th position, as here comes Phil Capstick through to complete his 35th lap of the race. Just 4 minutes left on the clock. Over the line he comes, a 1 minute 3.693. So Capstick has had a very solid lap on that occasion. Is James Britton going to have been able to reel him in by a sufficient amount this time around, as he darts along the berm straight over the line, and 4 seconds, so it's down to 14.5 seconds with 4 minutes left on the clock. I think there's probably going to be 5 laps from this one to go. So through Graham Hill Bend, having cleared the traffic, goes Phil Capstick. And now this, Chris, is going to be a make or break couple of laps here for Phil Capstick, because he's got a fair amount of clear track ahead of him, and the car that's immediately in front of him on the road is Major Jim Cameron in the Porsche, and he's actually driving away from Phil Capstick.
Yeah, that BMW now just making its way through, lights on. It's figured out that that might just help a bit of the traffic. The trouble is, you dive at the inside of somebody, one of the slower cars on the way into somewhere like Graham Hill Bend, you take a much tighter entry to the corner than you really want to, and by doing that, it makes you automatically, your car drift out wide on the exit and onto the curb. Somebody's just had a half spin not too far in front of the BMW. That was the number 90 Honda Civic of Donna Marie Mapleston, the car which is running just outside the top 10 in 13th position. The ones that really benefited in that pit stop window with the number 3 outfit, Clint Compan and Mike Moraes in the Seat Leon. That number 3 car, which was battling away with the number 93 machine, has got itself into 8th place, was the 93 car is down to 15th position now, so a real advantage gained. Another 63-second lap there has been for the race leaders. A new fastest lap of the race, though, goes to the car in 4th place, the Clio Cup car of Thomas and Croft with a 58.264, and they are only 8.2 seconds behind John Hamilton, number 56 Clio, in 3rd place, and still possibly time if they can keep that rate of knots up to do something about him. And the gap between the top two comes down, but not by very much on that lap due to the traffic. James Britton, though, should have a clearer lap this time round. 13.1 seconds the gap from 1st to 2nd.
Well, here comes the race leader, Phil Capstick, over the line now, and he does a 1 minute 2.4, so he ups his pace, and this should have been a much clearer lap from James Britton. This will probably give us once more a true indication of his pace as he crosses the start and finish line, a 57.4, and so that is 5 seconds quicker. He brings the gap down to under 10 seconds for the first time. We've got 2 minutes left on the clock, and so we're going to get this lap and probably 2 more after it, as down from Druids comes the race leader, and now his lead is just the descent of the hill from Druids towards Graham Hill Bend, but a couple of slower cars for James Britton to try and clear, and he's unable to go past the BMW, go through Graham Hill Bend. We've got an errant Clio at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend. Is that John Hamilton?
Yeah, it's Hamilton. He's going to lose 3rd place to the other Clio of Thomas and Croft, which was only 8 seconds behind it and flying.
He has lost it, so Thomas and Croft in the team Cream Slice, the white Clio, now in 3rd place into Graham Hill Bend, and John Hamilton, well, he's been threatening to do that all race long. Right, into the penultimate lap now for Phil Capstick, and his fastest lap of the race, a 1:01. What about James Britton? And it's a 58.2.
5.1 seconds the gap with 2 laps to go. Ordinarily you'd say that was not going to happen. Number 50 gets a spin. That's one of the Lotus Elises losing it, the David Scarborough, Anthony Sharp Lotus Elise, Skelly's Heroes. Where was that car running? It was well outside of the top 10. In fact, it was down in 30th place, gets going again. So ordinarily you'd say 5 seconds, 2 laps to go, no way, but the rate in which the gap has been coming down, very possibly so. Right, coming out of Graham Hill Bend, number 66, the Silver Lotus, but there is a gaggle of back markers frustratingly for James Britton. They're all battling each other, and they've forgotten to let him through. He gets past 2 of them now on the way into Surtees. He can still see the Lotus, so these 2 quicker cars firing their way through the traffic. I'll tell you what, Ben, the gap is nowhere near 5 seconds now, and the BMW now needs to clear this last back marker. There's going to be some more lapping to do. The last lap will be relatively clearer in terms of traffic for the top 2. The BMW has now got a great run coming out of clearways here. Lights are blazing as they come to the start-finish line, and the gap is nose to tail. It's down to 0.2 of a second. To the outside goes James Britton here. The Elise is surely not going to hang on to this. It's going to be 1 lap too many for it, Ben.
His final lap of the race was worried the Saab was going to be the spoiler, and through into the lead goes James Britton. He moves up on the inside of the Elise of Phil Capstick, and James Britton on the final lap of the race takes the lead away from Phil Capstick and Jack Goff, who have held the lead, in fact, for the entire 45 minutes, because he took the lead after the clock ticked to 0. Not there'll be any consolation for them. So James Britton, he takes the lead and has managed as well to put the Saab between himself and Phil Capstick in 2nd place. So Britton just a couple of corners between himself and the checkered flag, and what has been an excellent chase down victory here for the BMW. He kept his powder dry when the circuit was wet and treacherous at the start of the race. As it dried out and a dry line emerged, he was really able to take full advantage of it as he sprints along the Ram straight for the final time. This has been a superb drive from James Britton. The checkered flag goes out and he claims the win in the ClubMSV TrackDay Trophy. Into 2nd place we have the 66 car of Phil Capstick and Jack Goff, and then a little bit of a wait back down the Bradman Straight, where we are going to see the number 6 car of Thomas and Croft, David Thomas, Dan Croft, come home in 3rd position, 18 seconds off lead, but they set their best lap of the race on the final lap of the race. John Hamilton will emerge into 4th position. Eventually he accelerates out of Clark Curve now and along the Bradman Straight. So Hamilton comes home in 4th position. 5th place has gone to the number 69, the WMSS Motorsport Saab of Paul Drummond and Andrew Green. In 6th place we have had the number 88 TFL Racing Subaru of Lee McCormick and Peter Longworth, and then in 7th place is number 64. That is the McHughes, Tom McHugh and Jamie McHugh. 8th place has gone to the number 3 machine and that is Clint Cumpen and Mark Murray, the Seat Leon, really coming good towards the end of the race. In 9th place, we've got car 48, and that's George Wright and James Cameron, and Cameron putting in a storming drive in the closest stages to bring that car up into the top 10, and then rounding out the top 10 is car number 16, and that is Nigel White. So the top 10 very closely covered in the end, with 4 cars on the lead lap. The rest of the order is in 11th place, number 22, that's Littlewoods. In 12th place is the 99 car of Smith and Flower. 13th place is the number 90 car of Donna Marie Mapleston and Alex Reed. In 14th place is car 4, Ray Honeybone and Steve Brown. 15th place is 93, Paul Cook.